Francisco Salazar was finishing another day of work at the Santa Clara Hospital, located in the heart of Sheffield. As he said goodbye to his colleagues and reviewed the last reports, fatigue weighed heavily on his shoulders. A man of medium height, with brown hair and attentive eyes, Francisco had the countenance of one who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. It had been a long day, like most of his days since he decided to embark on the arduous journey of becoming a doctor. Despite the long hours at the hospital and the nights dedicated to studying, he never allowed himself to falter. He knew that each step, however difficult, was necessary to ensure a better future for his family. At home, Natalia, his wife, faced her own battles. As an elementary school teacher, her days were equally exhausting, divided between classes and taking care of the home. Natalia was a woman of strong spirit, her smile warm and her eyes always full of hope. Together, they shared the responsibility of raising their daughter Victoria, a 5-year-old girl with a rare disease that required constant care and expensive treatments. That night, Francisco left the hospital feeling more dejected than usual. As he walked towards the parking lot, his late father's voice echoed in his head. "You will go far, Francisco. Never doubt it." Despite the difficulties, those words always instilled in him a renewed determination. Getting into his car, an old but reliable model, he called Natalia. "Hi, love. I'm on my way. Do you need me to buy anything?" he asked softly. On the other end of the line, Natalia, with her always sweet voice, replied, "No, dear, just come home safe." The drive home always gave him time to reflect. He thought about the sacrifices they had both made, the sleepless nights, and the endless hours of study and work. He knew Natalia was exhausted too, but she never complained. Her unconditional love and support were the pillar that kept him strong. Upon arriving home, Francisco was greeted by a warm welcome home from Natalia, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "How was your day, dear?" she asked, turning to greet him with a radiant smile. Francisco responded with a tired smile. "I'm happy, Natalia," he said, returning her embrace. "You know we need the money, especially now with the costs of Victoria's treatment." Little Victoria was already asleep in her room, oblivious to the worries that plagued her parents. Francisco entered her room and watched her for a moment, her small figure curled up under the blankets. He approached and kissed her forehead, whispering, "I will do everything I can to give you a better life, my little one." After dinner, while Natalia was cleaning up the kitchen, Francisco couldn't stop thinking about his boss, Dr. Sebastian, a demanding man who never seemed satisfied with his work. "He's demanding, and it seems like nothing I do is enough," he vented to Natalia. "But that's why you're studying to be a doctor, isn't it? To be able to do more for Victoria and other patients," Natalia reminded him as they served dinner. "Yes, that's right," Francisco agreed, taking his wife's hand in gratitude. "Every day I spend in that hospital, I learn more, and that gives me more strength to continue my studies. Financial worries were always present. Victoria's treatments were expensive, and although Francisco's salary at the hospital and Natalia's as a teacher helped, they could barely cover their basic expenses. Medical bills were piling up, and every doctor's visit brought new pressures. Despite everything, they never lost hope. Francisco and Natalia were a team, facing adversity together with courage and love. They knew that although the road was arduous, every sacrifice would be worth it for their daughter's well-being. Francisco sat down at the dining room table, his medical books open in front of him. The words were jumbled in his tired mind, but he kept going, determined not to give up. Natalia, watching him from the kitchen, felt a surge of love and pride for her husband. Despite everything, he never stopped fighting for his family. That night, as they were getting ready for bed, Natalia whispered, "Everything will be all right, Francisco. God will show us a way out." Francisco nodded, hugging her tightly. "I know, Natalia. I just have to keep going. For you and for Victoria." With those words, they both fell asleep, clinging to the hope of a better future. The struggle was constant, but the love and determination they shared gave them the strength to face any challenge. They knew that, together, they could overcome any obstacle life threw their way. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when Francisco got up to get ready for another day at Santa Clara Hospital. Fatigue still weighed on his eyes, but he knew he had to keep going. After a quick breakfast and saying goodbye to Natalia and Victoria, he headed to the hospital. The commute was a familiar routine, but at every corner, at every traffic light, Francisco couldn't stop thinking about the challenges his family faced. Upon arriving at the hospital, the daily routine began. Francisco reviewed reports, attended to patients, and collaborated with his colleagues. Despite the workload and constant pressure, he always treated each patient with the same dedication and empathy. He knew that behind every medical history there was a life, a family, and he never forgot that. That morning, as he headed to reception to collect some documents, a scene caught his attention. An elderly woman, dressed in worn and dirty clothes, was standing at the counter. Her voice was weak and trembling as she pleaded for help. The receptionist, Mariana, maintained an expression of discomfort and firmness. "Please, I need your documents or your health insurance card to assist you," Mariana insisted, visibly annoyed. "I don't have my documents. Please, help me," replied the old woman in a broken, almost inaudible voice. Francisco felt a pang of indignation. He knew the hospital's policies were strict, but he also knew that the duty of a healthcare professional was to help those in need, regardless of their condition. Without thinking twice, he approached. "Can I help with anything?" he asked, interrupting the conversation. Mariana looked at him in surprise, clearly displeased. "Francisco, this lady has no documents or insurance. We cannot treat her here." Francisco nodded, understanding the situation but determined to act. "We'll take the lady to one of the consulting rooms to see what's going on," he said, gently taking the old woman's arm. The receptionist tried to protest, but Francisco was already guiding the woman into the hospital. He knew he could face consequences for his actions, but the need to help was stronger than any fear. Once in the consulting room, Francisco helped the old woman to sit down. "Don't worry, everything will be all right," he said in a soft tone, trying to calm her down while searching for a sphygmomanometer and a stethoscope. "Are you a doctor?" asked the old woman with effort. "No, I'm a nurse, but I'm studying to be a doctor someday," Francisco replied with a mixture of humility and pride. He quickly assessed the lady's condition, noting that she had low blood pressure and possibly heart problems. After taking her blood pressure and performing a brief auscultation, he administered medication to stabilize her. "This should help with your blood pressure, but you need a more detailed examination, especially for your heart," explained Francisco with evident concern. He decided to take her to the staff break room, a more private place where they wouldn't attract the attention of the hospital administration. "Stay here until my shift is over. I'll be back to see how you're doing and help in any way I can," he assured her, covering her with a blanket to ensure her comfort. The old woman, now a little more stable, looked at Francisco with gratitude. "Thank you, young man. You're an angel," she said in a weak but sincere voice. Francisco smiled slightly, relieved to have been able to help, but aware of the risk he had taken. He returned to his work, trying to maintain his composure as he attended to the remaining patients of the day. However, the concern for the lady he had left in the break room never left his mind. At the end of his shift, Francisco was abruptly called to Dr. Sebastian's office. He entered the office, an imposing space that reflected the doctor's authority in the hospital. Sitting behind a large desk, Dr. Sebastian looked at him with a stern expression. "Francisco Salazar, you again," the doctor began reproachfully. "Mariana informed me about today's incident. You treated an elderly woman without documents and, worst of all, without means to pay. That is unacceptable." Francisco remained composed, trying to explain. "Dr. Sebastian, I understand the hospital's policy, but that lady needed help. Every human being deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their social status. I am willing to assume the costs of the treatment, even if it means deducting it from my salary." Dr. Sebastian, however, did not allow Francisco to finish. "Salazar, what you did goes against all our rules. This is not just about money, it's about principle. You are fired. You can leave now," he sentenced in a cold and decisive voice. Francisco felt a mixture of indignation and desolation. He knew he had done the right thing by helping the lady, but now he was facing the consequences of his actions. He stood up, looked at Dr. Sebastian one last time, and left the office in silence. Heading to the break room where he had left the old woman, Francisco was engulfed in a sea of worry. He wondered how he would support his family and care for his daughter now that he had lost his job. The responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders. But at that moment, he knew he needed to focus on the well-being of the lady he had helped. Upon reaching the room, he found the lady asleep, her breathing now more stable. Gently, Francisco woke her up. "Excuse me for waking you, but I need to talk to you," he said softly. The lady opened her eyes slowly, looking a little stronger than before. "How do you feel?" Francisco asked, genuinely concerned. "I feel better thanks to you," replied the lady. "But I don't want to cause any more trouble. I can go now." Francisco looked at the lady with a mixture of concern and determination. He knew he couldn't let her go like this, not without doing more. "Wait a moment," he said, taking out his wallet. "Take this," he added, handing her some bills. "I know it's not much, but it can help you a little." The lady, with tears in her eyes, took the money with trembling hands. "I don't know how to thank you, young man. You are very kind," she said in a broken voice. "Take care, and if you need anything else, don't hesitate to look for me," Francisco replied, trying to smile despite the sadness he felt inside. Leaving the hospital, Francisco felt the weight of uncertainty crushing him. He walked slowly towards his car, each step heavier than the last. The future looked bleak, and worries about how to support his family and pay for Victoria's treatments clouded his mind. The drive back home was silent. Only the sound of the engine filled the air. When he arrived, Natalia was waiting for him at the door, her expression of concern unmistakable. "What happened, Francisco? You're later than usual," she asked softly. Francisco looked down and sighed deeply before answering. "I was fired, Natalia. I helped a lady without documents and Dr. Sebastian didn't tolerate it." Natalia hugged him tightly, trying to instill some hope in him. "You did the right thing. No matter what they say, you must always help others." Natalia's words gave him some comfort, but the reality remained harsh. What are we going to do now? We need that money for Victoria's treatments. Natalia, ever the optimist, tried to think of solutions. We're going to get through this together. You'll find another job, I'm sure of it. In the meantime, we can try to adjust our expenses and look for help. That night, while Victoria slept, Francisco and Natalia discussed their options. They decided that Francisco would start sending job applications to other hospitals and look for temporary work to be able to keep the family afloat. The following days were exhausting. Francisco spent his mornings and afternoons distributing resumes throughout the city and looking for temporary jobs. In the evenings, he dedicated himself to studying, despite being exhausted. His dream of becoming a doctor had never seemed so far away, but he was not willing to give up. One grey and silent morning, as Francisco was reviewing job offers on his computer, the sound of the phone broke the silence. At first, he hesitated to answer. The last few weeks had been filled with disappointments, and the prospect of another call with bad news was not appealing. However, he picked up the phone and answered. "Hello? Francisco Salazar?" a polite but firm voice asked. "Yes, this is he," Francisco replied, with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "This is Dr. Lopez from Santa Clara Hospital. We would like to invite you to a job interview," the voice on the other end of the line continued. Francisco was momentarily speechless. Santa Clara was the same hospital that had recently fired him. Santa Clara? "Excuse me, could you repeat that?" he asked, trying to process the information. "Yes, Santa Clara Hospital," Dr. Lopez confirmed. "We have reviewed your file and would like to speak with you about a possible employment opportunity. Would you be able to come tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning?" Francisco accepted the invitation with a knot in his stomach. After hanging up, he sat in silence for a moment, trying to understand what had just happened. Confusion and hope were mixed in his mind. That night, while they were having dinner, Francisco shared the news with Natalia. "They called me from Santa Clara Hospital," he said, dropping the bombshell. "What? But they fired you recently. Why would they want to talk to you again?" Natalia asked, as surprised as he was. "I don't know," Francisco replied, "but I accepted the interview. Maybe something happened that we don't know about." Natalia nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "It's an opportunity, Francisco. You have to go and see what it's about. Maybe something good will come of this." Francisco spent the rest of the evening preparing his documents and reviewing possible interview questions. Despite the uncertainty, he felt a spark of hope. The next morning, Francisco woke up early, feeling a mixture of nervousness and hope. He dressed carefully, making sure his suit was impeccable. Natalia watched him from the bedroom doorway, trying to instill confidence in him with a warm smile. "You're going to do an excellent job, Francisco. Just be yourself," she said as she hugged him. "Thank you, Natalia. I needed to hear that," he replied, returning her embrace. With one last look in the mirror, he left the house for Santa Clara Hospital. Arriving at the hospital, the building seemed as imposing as ever. The memories of his dismissal were still fresh, but Francisco forced himself to focus on the opportunity in front of him. He went to the reception desk, where a new receptionist greeted him and escorted him to Dr. Lopez's office. "Good morning, Francisco. Thank you for coming," said Dr. Lopez, welcoming him. "I know this situation is somewhat unusual, but we appreciate your willingness to meet with us." "Good morning, Doctor. I am here to listen and see how I can contribute," replied Francisco, trying to remain calm. Dr. Lopez smiled and invited him to sit down. "Before we begin, there is someone who would like to meet you. She is a very important person to us," he said, gesturing towards the door. Francisco turned his head and saw the same elderly woman he had helped weeks ago enter. He rose from his seat, surprised. "Doña Gabriela, what are you doing here?" he asked, unable to hide his astonishment. The old woman smiled and approached him. "Francisco, I think it's time to explain a few things," she said in a firm but kind voice. "My real name is Gabriela, and I am the owner of Santa Clara Hospital." Francisco was speechless, trying to assimilate the revelation. "I don't understand." "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked, still stunned. Gabriela sighed and began to explain. "I needed to see with my own eyes how the patients were being treated in this hospital. I've been concerned about stories I've heard about the lack of ethics and compassion here. That's why I disguised myself as a poor old woman and went looking for help. I wanted to see how the staff would react without knowing who I was." Francisco nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "And what you saw was not good," he said, remembering how the receptionist had treated Gabriela. "Exactly," Gabriela confirmed. "But what struck me most was your reaction. Despite knowing that you were risking getting into trouble, you didn't hesitate to help me. That showed me that there are still people in this hospital who value humanity and compassion above all else." Dr. Lopez intervened in the conversation. "Francisco, after learning what you did for Gabriela, we decided to make some major changes in the hospital administration. Dr. Sebastian no longer works here, and we are rebuilding the team with people who share our values." Gabriela looked at Francisco with an expression of gratitude. "I want you to come back to work here, Francisco. And besides, I want to help you with something else. I know your daughter Victoria needs expensive treatment. I want to offer to cover all the medical expenses necessary for her recovery." Francisco felt a wave of emotion and relief. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "This means everything to my family. All I ask is that you continue to be the person you are, and that you help maintain the values we want for this hospital," Gabriela replied, gently touching Francisco's arm. Dr. Lopez smiled. "Welcome back, Francisco. We are confident that you will make a big difference here." Francisco, with tears in his eyes, shook hands with Gabriela and Dr. Lopez. "Thank you. I promise I won't let you down," he said resolutely. That night, when he got home, Francisco found Natalia waiting for him with a mixture of anxiety and hope. "How did it go?" she asked breathlessly. "They offered me the job, and Gabriela is going to cover all of Victoria's medical expenses," Francisco replied, feeling the words could barely contain the emotion he felt. Natalia hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "This is a miracle, Francisco. I knew something good was going to happen." The next few days were spent preparing for his return to the hospital. Francisco felt renewed, with an energy and motivation he had not felt in a long time. Returning to work at Santa Clara meant more than just a job. It was an opportunity to make a real difference. On his first day back, he was warmly welcomed by his new colleagues. Although some faces were new, the spirit of the team had changed. Everyone seemed more committed to the mission of providing compassionate and ethical patient care. Francisco headed to the emergency room, his new workplace. As he put on his coat, he felt a surge of gratitude and determination. He was ready to face any challenge that came his way, knowing that he was backed by a team that shared his values and, above all, by the love and support of his family. Francisco adjusted his white coat and took a deep breath before entering the ER. The atmosphere in the hospital had changed markedly since he had last been there. There was a renewed energy and a sense of purpose that had previously been lacking. Dr. Lopez, now director of the hospital, had implemented a number of reforms to ensure that patient care was the priority. Francisco began his shift by observing and getting to know his new colleagues. He noticed that many of them shared his enthusiasm for change. "It's a new beginning for all of us," commented a veteran nurse named Miguel. "Dr. Lopez and Gabriela have done a great job of making sure we get back to our core principles: compassion and ethical care." Days passed, and Francisco quickly adapted to his new role. His dedication and work ethic did not go unnoticed. On each shift, he made an effort to get to know patients, understand their needs, and provide them with the best possible care. His colleagues respected him for his professional and humane approach, and he soon became a key figure in the unit. One afternoon, while reviewing patient reports, he received a call from Dr. Lopez. "Francisco, I need to speak with you in my office," the doctor said seriously. Francisco felt a slight knot in his stomach as he made his way to the director's office. Upon entering, he saw Dr. Lopez and Gabriela sitting there waiting for him. "Come in, Francisco. Sit down," Gabriela said with a kind smile. "Thank you for coming, Francisco," Dr. Lopez began. "We want to talk to you about an important proposal." Gabriela took the floor. "As you know, I have promised to cover Victoria's medical expenses. I want to make sure your daughter receives the best possible treatment without it being a burden on your family." Francisco nodded gratefully. "I don't know how to thank you for this. It means a lot to us." "But there's more," Gabriela continued. "We've been thinking about how we can further improve the hospital, and we believe you could play a crucial role in this process." Dr. Lopez nodded in agreement. "We want you to be part of the leadership team, helping to implement new policies and programs that ensure that every patient receives quality care. We know that your experience and commitment are invaluable." Francisco felt a mixture of surprise and honor. "It's a big responsibility. I'm willing to accept it and work hard to live up to expectations." "We know you'll do a great job," said Gabriela. "Your dedication and work ethic are exactly what we need." After the meeting, Francisco returned to the ER with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew he had a unique opportunity to make a real difference in the hospital. The following days were intense, filled with meetings and planning. He worked closely with Dr. Lopez and other team members to develop new policies that would improve patient care and staff morale. One of the first initiatives was to establish a continuing education program for all medical personnel. Francisco was in charge of organizing workshops and seminars where experts in various areas of medicine and ethics shared their knowledge. These events not only improved the skills of the staff, but also fostered a sense of community and collaboration. Francisco also proposed the creation of an ethics committee to oversee and evaluate hospital practices. "It's important that we always stay true to our values, and that we have a system in place to ensure that we are all on the same page," he explained during a committee meeting. The change in the hospital was not immediate, but over time, the efforts of Francisco and the team began to bear fruit. Patients noticed the difference in the treatment they received, and the work environment improved significantly. The emergency room, which used to be a chaotic and stressful place, now functioned efficiently and harmoniously. Meanwhile, Victoria's health was also improving. With Gabriela's financial support, Natalia and Francisco were able to focus on giving their daughter the care she needed without worrying about debt. Doctors' visits became less stressful and more hopeful, with each treatment showing signs of progress. With Victoria's health improving and the financial stability provided by Gabriela's support, Francisco found himself with more energy and determination to contribute to the continued improvement of Santa Clara Hospital. During a meeting with the leadership team, an idea that had been on his mind finally took shape. "I want to propose something," Francisco began, addressing Dr. Lopez and Gabriela. "I think we could expand our reach and open a new wing of the hospital, dedicated to providing free or low-cost medical care to low-income people." The room fell silent for a moment as everyone absorbed the magnitude of the proposal. Dr. Lopez was the first to speak. "That's an ambitious idea, Francisco. Do you have anything more concrete in mind?" Francisco nodded, having anticipated this reaction. "I've been doing some research, and I think we could start with a community clinic that focuses on primary care and prevention. Over time, we could expand it to include specialty and emergency services. Not only would this project improve the health of the community, but it would also reinforce our values of compassion and service." Gabriela looked at Francisco with a mixture of admiration and consideration. "That's a very noble proposal. I like the idea, Francisco. How do you think we could finance a project of this magnitude?" "We could start with donations and look for government grants. In addition, I believe that many people in the community would be willing to help, whether with time, money, or resources. We can organize fundraising events and collaborate with other charities," Francisco explained enthusiastically. Dr. Lopez exchanged a look with Gabriela, who nodded slowly. "I agree," she finally said. "This project could make a big difference. I am willing to finance the initial costs and use my contacts to seek further support." With Gabriela's backing and Dr. Lopez's approval, Francisco set about planning the new project. The team worked tirelessly to define the details of the Victoria Hospital, the name they chose in honor of Francisco's daughter, whose recovery process symbolized hope and struggle. Over the following weeks, they began organizing community events to raise funds and raise awareness about the new project. Francisco became the face of the campaign, sharing his personal story and the purpose behind Victoria Hospital. The community response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life came together to support the cause, donating time, money, and resources. One afternoon, as Francisco was reviewing progress with Natalia at home, she looked at him proudly. "I can't believe everything you've accomplished in such a short time," she said, placing a hand over his. "This project is going to change so many lives." Francisco smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I couldn't have done it without you, Natalia. Your support has been fundamental." Preparations continued, and the land for the new clinic was secured thanks to the generosity of several local donors. Construction began enthusiastically, and each day brought new progress. Francisco oversaw every detail, ensuring that the clinic reflected the values of compassion and service that were at the heart of the project. On opening day, the community clinic was ready to open its doors. An arch of colorful balloons decorated the entrance, and a crowd had gathered to celebrate the event. Francisco, accompanied by Natalia, Victoria, Dr. Lopez and Gabriela, addressed the attendees with a speech full of emotion and gratitude. "Today, we take an important step towards a better future for our community," Francisco began. "Victoria Hospital is more than just a clinic. It is a symbol of what we can achieve when we work together for the common good. Thanks to everyone who has supported this project, we are demonstrating that compassion and service can change the world." Gabriela took the floor after Francisco. "This project is a testament to the spirit of our community. With Victoria Hospital, we want to ensure that no one goes without the health care they need, regardless of their economic situation. Thank you for believing in this vision and for making it a reality." The crowd applauded and was filled with enthusiasm as they cut the ribbon and officially opened the clinic. The first patients began to arrive, welcomed with warmth and professionalism by the medical staff. Joy and hope were palpable in the air. In the months that followed, Victoria Hospital became a cornerstone of the community. It provided essential medical services and organized health prevention and education workshops. Francisco worked tirelessly, ensuring that every patient received the care and respect they deserved. The clinic also attracted volunteers from across the country, doctors and nurses willing to donate their time and expertise. The project grew and evolved, always staying true to its original mission of providing care with dignity and compassion. One afternoon, while reviewing medical records, Francisco received a call from an anonymous donor who wanted to make a significant contribution to Victoria Hospital. "I have been following your work closely and I am impressed with what you have achieved. I want to help ensure that this clinic can continue to operate and grow," said the voice on the other end of the line. Francisco thanked the donor for their generosity and, hanging up, felt a deep satisfaction. He knew the road had not been easy, but every sacrifice, every moment of doubt had been worth it. Victoria Hospital was not only a dream come true, but living proof that with love, dedication and solidarity, even the biggest barriers could be overcome. The morning dawned serenely at the Salazar house. The sun filtered its first rays through the curtains, softly illuminating Victoria's room. The little girl, now healthier and full of energy, woke up with a smile. "Good morning, Daddy," she exclaimed as she saw Francisco peeking through the door. "Good morning, my love," Francisco replied, coming closer to kiss her forehead. "Ready for another day at school?" "Yes, I'm so excited," Victoria said, jumping out of bed. The improvement in her health had allowed her to return to school regularly, something that brought joy to the whole family. In the kitchen, Natalia was preparing breakfast with an expression of contentment and peace on her face. "Francisco, could you check the mail? I think something important arrived yesterday and I didn't have time to see it," she said as she poured the coffee. Francisco nodded and headed for the entrance. Among the letters and brochures, he found an envelope with the Victoria Hospital logo. He opened it curiously and read aloud, "We want to invite you and your family to the recognition ceremony for your dedication and contribution to Victoria Hospital. Your work has been instrumental to our success." Natalia came closer, smiling broadly. "It's a well-deserved recognition, Francisco. You've worked so hard to make this happen." Francisco felt proud and grateful. "I couldn't have done it without you and the support of Gabriela and Dr. Lopez," he replied, hugging his wife. That afternoon, Francisco went to Victoria Hospital for his shift. Upon arriving, he was warmly greeted by his colleagues. The atmosphere in the hospital was one of camaraderie and collaboration, a clear difference from the rigid and cold place it used to be. Each day, Francisco saw the positive impact that his work and that of his team were having on the community. During his lunch break, he met up with Gabriela in the hospital cafeteria. "Gabriela, I wanted to thank you again for all the support you have given us," Francisco said sincerely. "You don't have to thank me, Francisco. You and your team have done an incredible job here. I am very proud of what we have achieved together," Gabriela replied, with a warm smile. Victoria Hospital had become a symbol of hope and humanity. The clinic not only provided free or low-cost medical care, but also organized health education and prevention programs, community workshops, and awareness campaigns. Community response had been overwhelming, with volunteers and donors joining the cause to keep the project going. At home, the life of the Salazars had also improved significantly. Victoria was healthier and happier, enjoying her time at school and playing with her friends. Natalia, meanwhile, continued to teach with passion and dedication, knowing they were building a solid future for their family. One night, while they were having dinner, Victoria looked at her parents with a serious expression. "I want to be a doctor when I grow up," she said resolutely. "I want to help other people like you have helped me." Francisco and Natalia looked at each other, touched by their daughter's words. "You have a big heart, Victoria. You're going to be an excellent doctor," Francisco said, feeling a deep sense of pride. The day of the recognition ceremony arrived, and the Salazar family dressed in their finest attire. Upon arriving at the hospital, they were greeted with applause and congratulations from staff and patients. The ceremony was held in the hospital auditorium, decorated with flowers and lights. Dr. Lopez took the floor first. "Today we celebrate not only the success of Victoria Hospital, but also the effort and dedication of exceptional people like Francisco Salazar. His commitment and work ethic have been essential to our mission." Then Gabriela addressed the audience. "Francisco is an example of what it means to serve with your heart. His story and his work inspire us all to be better and to never forget the values of compassion and humanity." Francisco took the stage, accompanied by Natalia and Victoria. "I want to thank you all for this recognition," he began emotionally. "But this achievement is not mine alone. It is the result of teamwork and the unconditional support of my family and colleagues. Together, we have shown that with love and dedication, we can overcome any obstacle." The audience erupted in applause as Francisco, Natalia, and Victoria embraced, touched by the moment. The ceremony concluded with a celebration where everyone shared stories and anecdotes about the impact Victoria Hospital had had on their lives. In the years that followed, Victoria Hospital continued to grow and expand its services, becoming a benchmark for medical care and compassion in the region. Francisco continued to dedicate himself to his work with the same passion and commitment, always remembering the lessons learned and the power of collaboration. The Salazar family found stability and happiness, living each day with gratitude and love. Victoria, inspired by her parents' example, followed her dream of becoming a doctor, working hard to make her aspirations a reality. The legacy of Francisco and his team at Victoria Hospital lived on, reminding everyone that even in the darkest of times, the light of compassion and service can shine through and change the world for the better. And so, the story of the Salazars became an eternal testament to the power of love and solidarity. The story of Francisco Salazar and his family is a powerful narrative of resilience, love, and commitment to others. From the early days of struggle and despair to the culminating moment at Victoria Hospital, Francisco's journey is marked by his unwavering dedication and unwavering work ethic. Francisco's character is impressive for his humanity and courage. Despite being unfairly dismissed, he never lost sight of his values and continued to help those most in need. His ability to overcome adversity and his desire to create a positive impact on the community are inspiring examples of leadership and compassion. The most profound lesson of this story lies in the importance of solidarity and collaboration. The unconditional support of his wife Natalia, the recovery of his daughter Victoria, and the alliance with Gabriela and Dr. Lopez show how collective effort can transform lives and communities. Furthermore, the creation of Victoria Hospital not only represents a professional achievement, but also a symbol of hope and social justice. It teaches us that even in times of difficulty, acts of kindness and perseverance can overcome any obstacle, always reminding us of the value of serving with our hearts. If you find this story as moving as we do, please like and comment to let us know how you feel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other meaningful stories.